Hey everyone, Britta here. If this is your first time here, I'm a spiritual transformational life coach. It's my goal for this channel to help you overcome the obstacles that are standing in the way of you living your best and most authentic life. In today's video, I want to talk about not judging what somebody else came here to experience. When it comes to our day-to-day experiences in our life, we have a tendency, especially right now, to get wrapped up into the idea of fear, or into, I guess you could call it, a tidal wave of fear that is sweeping the globe. I feel in many ways things are calming down. Now, the things that you'll see in the news may seem contradictory to that, but you'll find very soon things are indeed calming down. There will be other things that unfold, but as for this situation, all we can do is agree to take it one day at a time. Now, it's really easy to get caught up in what's happening to other people and their life and their experiences. This is something that was shown to me personally actually this morning. I was laying in bed and I had these thoughts come through my mind. Things from 9/11, things from fictional stories that I've read, things that happened in Vietnam that I learned, things about the Holocaust, of stories of suffering. When you think about the suffering of other people, and by no means do I mean to undermine anybody's suffering, but you need to be very careful about taking on somebody else's suffering as your own. Not only is that not right, but it's not helpful for anybody. It's not helpful for you, it's not helpful for that person. So say, for example, if you were to put yourself in the position of the passengers of one of the planes that flew into the World Trade Center, and you think about the fear that they must have felt, and you think about just that whole experience and what that would have been like. What did they see? What did they feel? If they were standing in front of you right now, don't you think that would be a little bit disrespectful if you were to say, oh, I know exactly what you went through. It looked like this, it felt like this, and blah, 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 and this is what your suffering was like. They would say, no, you have no idea what I went through. You can't judge what somebody else came here to experience. The same thing when it comes to the suffering of people who maybe they have not died, say the suffering of children. Now, do we have an obligation as a society to make the changes, to expose the corruption, to punish those people, to save the people who are suffering? Yes, if you know of somebody who's suffering, you absolutely have an obligation to do something about it. But if you don't personally know anybody that's suffering, and all you know is that the suffering is happening in the world, you're then judging somebody else's experience, judging the world based upon what your perception of their experience is. And sometimes you can suffer more than what that other person has actually suffered, because we have certain things built into our brains to help us cope. And in the moment of that suffering, they may be experiencing shock. So as your perception of watching their suffering might actually be greater than the actual suffering. Again, this is not at all to downplay the suffering that anybody has experienced, but it's to bring us into present and realize that you cannot hold on to the suffering of others that does not belong to you. That suffering has its own meaning. That suffering has its own reason for the experience. Sometimes it's to shift the collective consciousness, because again, we can all collectively agree that this situation is not okay. We can all collectively agree that treating people this way is not okay. So there are things that happen that must take place in order to shed light onto corruption that's happening into the world. Yes, you should absolutely not think it's okay for those things to happen. It should not be okay for children to be abused or neglected or trafficked. No person should be experiencing that, child or otherwise. So yes, collectively, we should feel a certain way about it. But feeling a certain way about it and changing the world, changing the way that we do things, changing the way that we see things, changing the way that we view our fellow human beings, that is making changes for the better. That's making this earth a better place. But be very careful that you're not holding on to the suffering of others and claiming it as your own. All that's going to do is immobilize you in fear It's going to make you distrustful of your fellow humans. It's going to make you not feel safe. And I can tell you as a female that all growing up, all you hear is, don't go outside in the dark. Don't walk down the street by yourself in the daylight or not. You could get kidnapped. You could get raped. You could get murdered. You are fragile. You're this, you're that. Men are predators. Men are scary. Men have ill intentions. Men only want one thing from you. If that was the way that I lived my life, and I truly believed that, and many of us do for a long period of time, I would have never gotten married. I would have never had my children. You can't allow the suffering of others to justify these stories that we tell ourselves, because ultimately, when you're holding on to the suffering of others, and it's not your suffering, and you're claiming it as your own, and you feel like you understand what they went through, you can sympathize, but unless you've gone through it, you cannot empathize. So all it's going to do when you attempt to empathize with something you've never experienced before is it's going to mess you up. It's going to hold you back from life. It's going to keep you from having relationships with people. It's going to keep you from doing the things that you really want to. And for me personally, the reason that I brought up 9/11 in the World Trade Centers is because it's been revealed to me that that is one of the reasons that I'm afraid to fly. So I know that personally, I have some more healing to do when it comes to holding on to the trauma of others, of picturing what it was like for those people on the plane. That's not my trauma. That's not my place. It's not even right for me to try to hold on to that or to try to think that that's what they felt. It's dishonoring to their memory. I have no idea what they felt, what they thought, what they experienced. And I have no right to try to do so. And all that it's done for me is made me personally afraid to fly, made me feel not safe on an airplane, and therefore it's hindered my ability to see my family across the country. It's hindered my ability to see the world and travel the world like I would love to do. So when I say this, I am truly speaking from experience. Be very careful about judging what other people came here to experience. You can say, I would never choose to experience that. Why would they choose to experience that? You don't know what their soul contract was before they came here. You don't know what lesson they wanted to learn or what symbiotic lesson that they have agreed to experience with somebody else. There's a book which I actually would love to do a series on, and I don't know that I've actually talked about it on this channel before, but it's called Conversations with God. And if you have not read it before or listened to the audiobook, I highly recommend that you do that. There's actually 3 books in this series, and it's a channeled work, and it really answers a lot of questions that I think people tend to ask the most. And in this book, it gives a parable about the little soul. The little soul wants to experience forgiveness. It's never experienced forgiveness before, and it says, I want to go into this life, and I would love to experience what it's like to forgive somebody. But the little soul looks around and realizes, well, nobody's ever done anything to me, so I have nobody to forgive. How could I possibly experience forgiveness? I would love to experience forgiveness, but how could I possibly experience forgiveness when there's nobody to forgive? And another soul stands up and says, little soul, I love you. I would be honored to volunteer to help you experience forgiveness. And the little soul is so excited. Really? You want to help me experience forgiveness? And the other soul says, yes, I love you, and I would be honored to help you experience forgiveness. But little soul, I ask one thing of you. The little soul says, yes, anything. The other soul says, please remember who I really am. When I do these things to you and I hurt you, when this is over, please remember who I really am. And the little soul says, I could never forget you. I will always remember who you are. So of course the message for that parable is we don't know the relationship that we have with the people who are here with us. We don't know what agreements we've made. We don't know what we originally knew when we came here, what we wanted to experience. and the sacrifice of those who may have volunteered to help us experience that. And their higher selves, their true selves, their soul, the part of them that is God, saying, please don't forget who I really am. So important not to judge what other people came here to experience, not to claim their suffering as your own, because I promise you have enough for yourself already. Collectively, we are healing. This time to be at home is about self-reflection. This year, 2020, is no coincidence. It's the year to see, to open our eyes, to see fully who we are, kicking and screaming or without resistance. But when it's all said and done, we will be healed. I love you all so much. Thank you for being with me this evening. Down below, I'm opening up some more slots for a free 30-minute call. If you would like assistance for anything, shadow work, encouragement, a place to vent, click that link below. Let's set up a time to chat. I look forward to talking to you soon.